On June 8, 793, dawn revealed dragon-prowed ships slicing through North Sea fog toward Lindisfarne's undefended monastery. Monk Cuthbert trembled as he clutched Bede's manuscripts while Norse axes splintered the oak doors of St. Cuthbert's shrine. Charlemagne's spies raced Frankish warhorses 500 miles from Aachen to report longships ascending the Seine in 799. At the royal villa in Quentovic, Frankish children hid silver spoons beneath floorboards as Ragnar's fleet burned the trading port. Norse navigators read Atlantic wind patterns by tasting salt spray and watching Arctic tern migrations toward Ireland's coast. Dublin's founding in 841 saw Ulf the shipwright burying his wife's amber beads near the Liffey River ford. Anglo-Saxon chroniclers in Winchester dipped quills in oak gall ink, recording. King Aella of Northumbria gagged on his own blood as Ivar the Boneless carved the blood eagle upon him at York's capture in 867. Peasant Eanred abandoned his Wessex wheatfield, fleeing behind Alfred's newly erected burh walls at Shaftesbury. Norse blacksmiths reforged Saxon spearheads into plowshares across the Danelaw's 15,000 square miles of occupied England. At the Siege of Paris in 885, Rollo's warriors slid on seal-greased ladders while Frankish archers rained Greek fire from the Petit Pont. Byzantine silk unrolled in Hedebe's marketplace beside Somani dirhams looted from Bulgar trade routes. 3 generations of Norse bones rested under Jelling's rune stones while Harald Bluetooth's carvers depicted Christ swallowing pagan serpents. On Orkney's windswept coast, Thora stirred barley porridge in soapstone pots as Gaelic thralls churned butter. Alfred's spies intercepted Norse messages by deciphering runic notches on wooden tally sticks near Chippenham. At Edington's 878 battle, Saxon shield walls churned Wiltshire mud into crimson sludge under Viking war hammers. Guthrum's baptismal water dripped onto Winchester Cathedral's tiles as Alfred stood godfather to his conquered foe. Skallagrimur Kveldulfsson composed Drapur verses while Icelandic longhouses creaked under Greenland's midnight sun. Dublin's slave markets chained Pictish miners beside Breton fishermen, their prices set in ounces of English silver. Byzantine Varangian Guards gripped Ramphia swords outside Hagia Sophia, their arms glittering with Miklagard gold. Monk Asser winced while copying manuscripts, his quill scratching over Viking raids described in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle entries for 892. Olaf Tryggvason's longship Ormrand Langi pierced Irish waves with 68 oarsmen chanting toward the Battle of Tara in 980. At Malden's Causeway in 991, Saxon the GN Byrnoth shouted. Athelred's Danegeld collectors weighed 22,000 pounds of silver into chests while London's poor starved. Canute's crowning at London in 1016 merged Norse and Saxon laws under one crown forged by conquest. Norwegian longships dragged across the Corinth Isthmus in 1025, their keels scarring marble roads toward Aegean raids. Rus merchants unloaded Volga honey at Baghdad's gates while Hussar guards inspected rune-carved amulets. York's Coppergate workshops echoed with Norse shoemakers' awls piercing leather beside Anglian weavers' looms. At Brevellier's legendary battle, Shieldmaiden Hervor died gripping her father's cursed sword Tyrfing. Monks on Iona buried Columba's relics beneath barnacled rocks before Sweyn Forkbeard's fleet arrived in 986. Normandy's Duke Richard II commissioned stone keeps where wooden mead halls once stood against Viking warbands. On Gotland's beaches, hordes of 40,000 Arabic coins glittered beneath runestones naming fallen traders. At Stiklestad in 1030, Olaf Haraldsson's blood seeped into Norwegian soil as peasants hid his corpse from Danish pursuers. Thorkel the Tall's mercenaries guarded Athelred's throne while plotting with Sweyn's invading fleet in 1013. Irish annalists inked. Byzantine silk worms spun threads destined for Norse Dublin's elite, carried over 3,000 miles of river routes. At Fyrkat Fortress, Seirses chanted over sacrificed falcons while interpreting smoke patterns for Harald Bluetooth. On the Seine's muddy banks, Rollo's grandson William trained cavalry where his ancestors beached longships. Norwegian stone carvers at urns twisted serpent motifs around Christian crosses in 1050s stylistic fusion. Skaldic poets at Canute's Winchester court blended kenning metaphors with Old English alliterative verse. At Stamford Bridge in 1066, Harald Hardrada's last berserker swung his Dane axe until an English spear found his throat. Norman knights who descended from Viking raiders now charged under papal banners at Hastings' fateful ridge. Iceland's Ilingi assembly echoed with lawspeakers' voices where Norwegian exiles judged cases by ancestral custom. Rus envoys signed trade treaties in Constantinople using runic seals beside Greek signatures in 945. York's Archbishop Wulfstan preached fiery sermons against Norse incest practices while dining with Danish jarls. On Lewis Chessman, Norse ivory carvers depicted Viking warriors transformed into medieval queens and bishops. Frankish chronicler Dudo of St. Quentin recorded Rollo's deathbed confession while omitting his pagan sacrifices. At Trelleborg's circular fortress, 500 warriors slept in identical longhouses radiating like sunbeams from Harold's Hall. Dublin's Norse houses stood empty after 1171's fall, leaving only Hiberno-Norse silver pennies in the mud. On Jomsborg's Baltic Isle, legendary warriors drank from skullcups while swearing oaths to never flee battle. English place names, from Grimsby to Scunthorpe, fossilized Norse settlers' presence across the Danelaw. Skald Eyvindr Skaldaspillir composed verses comparing dead kings to. At Clontarf's 1014 battle, Irish axes shattered Norse shields while tidewaters drowned fleeing invaders. Runestone U-344 in Sweden memorialized a warrior who. The last Norse longship departed Greenland in 1410, its hull groaning under walrus ivory and frozen dreams. At Jelling's burial mounds, Harold Bluetooth's runestone stood sentinel between pagan and Christian worlds.